It was a Sunday morning, much like this one a year ago. Only we woke up to news that the nation's deadliest mass shooting took place just up the road. Our reporters and photographers recently traveled back, chronicling Pulse +1 for the USA Today network.
Orange County with the transfer is going to be in reference to a shooting at Pulse nightclub.
The officers don't know how many suspects there are, who's shooting at who.
And everyone around me just starts dropping. Glass of the bar starts shattering.
People were running and I lowered the music and then I realized, something really was happening.
Nunca había sentido como ese dolor tan grande.
You can say that you feel what we feel, but you don't. You have to go through what we went through, so you really know what we went through, to feel what we feel.
We were all deeply impacted by the tragedy at Pulse. Gay, straight, white, Latino, doesn't matter.
You can't fathom a place that you consider safe and a place where you can go be yourself and just have a good time. It's like something like this could happen there.
I think, first off, what I want the world to know is that Orlando is still healing and that the families and survivors here have not moved on.
Ryan Mills was our eyes and ears on the ground in Orlando, and you were there immediately following the shootings a year ago.
Yeah, I got sent up that morning. I was mowing my lawn and I got the call that we needed to go up there, and I was up there by mid-afternoon and interviewing people who were looking for their loved ones and looking for their friends that they just didn't know where they were.
And how would you kind of categorize the scene? Was it chaotic at that time?
When we first got there, yeah. I mean, where I went was they had, next to the hospital, they had all of the people who were looking for their loved ones in a hotel. And they were all gathered there, and it was flooded with national media reporters and local media reporters and TV and newspapers from around the world. And those people were trying to touch base with these people who were looking for their loved ones. I mean, they were, some people would come out and have conversations with the media because they wanted to get their loved one's name and face out there.
It was heartbreaking.
Other people didn't want anything to do with it.
And I imagine while you were there, the course of that time, the news was coming out and you're realizing really the magnitude of the tragedy.
Yeah, I think, again, it was a year ago, but I think we kind of had a grasp on how big it was in terms of the number of dead and the number of injured, at least at that time. But it really kind of hit you. I think the two things that hit me were just the number of people who were looking for their loved ones. I mean, it was just this massive number of people who didn't know what was happening. They may have been getting ideas of how many people were killed or injured, but they didn't know if their loved one was one of those. The other thing that I took note of was just how big of a media response it was. It was just amazing. I mean, there was people from around the world.
Yeah, on a Sunday morning, too. Everybody probably rocked out of their normalcy like you were.
Yeah, and I mean, I was there with reporters from Vietnam. I remember walking to a press conference with a reporter from Vietnam who needed help trying to find the hospital. It was just pretty amazing.
There were a lot of moving parts. Now, going back again a year later, or approximately a year later, what did you see maybe that was different?
What we've gotten from a lot of people was that Orlando that day really came together. There was unity that developed that day, and over that, and we talked to people about that. We said, does it still exist? And they almost all said yes. I mean, that unity still exists a year later. That people that necessarily weren't friends or even colleagues or they didn't work together on the same issues, they know each other better now, and they have each other's phone numbers and they talk and they communicate, and there's just this unity that. At least the people we talked to felt still exists a year later.
Sure, and it's also worth noting that they had a workplace shooting this week that may have brought back some memories. You kept hearing the connection, though, that it's almost on the year anniversary of this mass shooting. While they weren't related at all, do you think it triggered maybe a little bit of a kind of pent-up emotion for people?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I can't speak for them. I wasn't there. I didn't talk to obviously different set of people, completely different circumstances, but I would imagine for the mayor and the police chief and the officials, it was kind of a similar situation that they had to deal with, and it probably brought back memories of what happened a year ago. For the victims and the people who survived, they probably just hate anytime having to hear about a shooting and wondering, well, what's happening here? Is this another one?
Sure, it does kind of spark those memories. And then lastly, we have a beautiful coverage coming out today that we want people also online and in the paper, but we have a really nice online kind of element to it.
Yeah, we did interviews, like I said, with different survivors and victims and people who's lost loved ones, and we've got portraits and audio clips of them speaking. We've got video. It's going to be a really compelling piece, I think.
Great. We encourage everybody to check it out. Thanks, Ryan.